Welcome, viewers and listeners, to another edition of CHP Talks. I'm here today with Mr. David Schaafsma, who is a candidate for us in Esquimalt, Saanich, Sooke on Vancouver Island. So, David, thanks for joining us tonight, and thanks for joining our team and being on our candidate team in this exciting time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, for those who may not know David, David Schaafsma is CHP candidate in Esquimalt, Saanich, Sooke. He was born in Ontario and moved to Victoria in 1993 after finishing optometry school at Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana. After getting married in 1995, he opened a solo optometry practice in Colwood, BC. That was in 1996, I'm sorry, where he is still providing eye care to this day. David and his wife have 3 children and 2 grandchildren. Dr. Schaafsma never envisioned entering politics, but he now sees it as his duty to preserve and expand the individual freedoms that we enjoy as Canadians. He also wants society and government to be built on a Christian foundation so that Canadians and their families can flourish. As a candidate for the Christian Heritage Party, Dr. Schaafsma, like all of our candidates, is fighting for our children's future by embracing the theme of life, family, and freedom. So again, thanks, David. I was so glad when we first met. I think I was in an airport when I first spoke to you on the phone, and
Yes.
your name had appeared, and I'm so glad that you've taken all the steps to be registered and confirmed with Elections Canada, and you're now on the ballot. So, when did you first think of getting involved in politics, or when did you first think of this idea that in order to protect your children in the future and grandchildren, that we are going to have to do something to save our country from going further down the whirlpool where it's heading now?
Well, I think it was when Justin Trudeau first got elected. I voted in the federal election, and I voted CHP because there was a gentleman in my riding who had put his name forward, and I felt that voting for the Christian Heritage Party was a vote of conscience, and I believe that voting Christian heritage was a way that I could be a witness, and also that I was joining a cloud of witnesses to basically seek uh, to move the ball forward with regards to how we run our society. And our country used to be founded on Christian principles. And I believe that, by voting Christian heritage, even though it was a long shot, it was that individual is giving me an opportunity to vote my conscience and to become, and then that stimulated sort of the thought process of, well, maybe as we approach the next election, and this one seems to be one that, yeah, I was focusing on in particular, and seemed to have the time to and energy to put forward, and putting forward my own campaign. And I thought, well, let's go with this, and ask the Lord for His blessing. And so yeah, it's here we are.
Yeah, very good. And I like the fact that you referred to your own conscience, even in terms of voting. I think there's a lot of Canadians out there, a lot of Canadian Christians who have a conscience, but maybe have not related. They haven't made a connection between their conscience and the ballot box.
Mhm.
In this year, particularly, as we see, we know that Pierre Poilievre, for instance, many Christians are voting. Well, they can't, unless they live in his riding, they can't really vote for him, but they're voting for his candidates, kind of regardless of um, where the individual candidate stands, that because they want to see Pierre Poilievre, take the prime minister's chair, but they don't kind of connect that he's pro-abortion, or he calls it pro-choice, but basically he said if he becomes prime minister, while he is prime minister, the same as Stephen Harper said, no legislation regulating abortion will pass under his
Hmm.
thing. So, anyways, that's one of the things that I'm trying to appeal to voters in my district, just to think of that. But it's not only that; it's also the gender issue. So.
Yes.
Pierre Poilievre has said, for instance, regarding same-sex marriage, that's currently the law of the land, and it will remain the law of the land while he's prime minister. So he's not interested in tampering with that. I think you said earlier when we were chatting, um, this C4, Bill C4, which passed a couple of years ago, is one of the kind of the bellwether issues that because every conservative, well, it's not quite fair to say they all voted for it, but not one of them voted against it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yes.
why don't you talk a little bit about C4 and what
Sure.
actually took place and what that means for the people of this country?
Well, as I've read through the legislation, and it was a bill that was to prohibit conversion therapy, which in its extreme form, I'm not for that either. I'm not for doing electroshock therapy on people that have same-sex attraction or have difficulty with gender dysphoria. However, the bill was written in such a way that even if a pastor were to counsel a young person about their confusion about gender, if he were to try to prevent them from moving forward, or at least counsel them that it would be not a good idea for them to go through with a gender transition, that would that would become against this law,
A criminal act, actually.
a criminal act actually. So this pastor or counselor could be fined or imprisoned, and so I really felt, that was another reason why I felt that I needed to move over to the Christian Heritage Party, voting and also in representing them, because so many conservative MPs voted in favor of that bill. And embedded in the very middle of that bill was a statement that is absolutely it's shocking, because it said that we all know that it's actually a myth that there are only two genders. So now, Tana, we've come to a place in our country where the government is declaring that this is mythology, that there is only male and that there's only female. And so really it's an attack on the truth. And this has implications for so many things in our society, how we put forward education for our kids in the public school, and also about how do we treat children when they are confused about their gender.
Yeah. Well, it has everything to do with parental rights, or the right and responsibility of a parent to guide and direct their child's development, right?
Hmm.
Both moral, physical, and moral development. And so, because it involves the healthcare system, if indeed, as is happening today, some of these young people, uh, kind of move in the direction of taking the drastic step of transitioning, so-called transitioning. Of course, they can't really transition because they can't change their DNA, but
That's right.
changing the outward appearances and sometimes the function of their God-given physical being,
Yes.
their body parts, so that God has given them. Um, Nobody's telling them in the schools that, well, I shouldn't say nobody, but generally the school counselors, and certainly in British Columbia, where you and I both live, the tenor uh, of the education ministry is supportive of transitioning or of supporting multiple types of genders, whereas you and I do agree, contrary to Bill C4, that there are only two genders, male and female.
Yeah,
In the beginning,
absolutely.
God made
Absolutely. Yeah.
them male and female. So
Mhm.
the fact that that bill could pass unanimously in the House, not one
Mhm.
voice raised against it, is quite disturbing
Mhm.
because I know that not all those conservative members of parliament who stood there and did nothing. I'm sure that there are some who had misgivings about it, and yet some kind of political pressure, internal pressure in the Conservative Party at the time, kept them from speaking out.
Mhm.
Yeah. So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So we
So,
go ahead.
well, I guess that, just if I could interject a little campaigning here.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So, if elected, I would like to bring forward legislation that would ban the transitioning of minors, so to prevent medical practitioners from using puberty blockers on those who are still moving towards puberty, and to prevent the use of so-called gender-affirming surgeries on minors as well. And I think, to Danielle Smith's credit as a premier, she's already done that in Alberta. But we need a law that goes from coast to coast to prevent this heinous thing from happening to our children. Because you mentioned changing the function of their bodies. Well, there are so many kids that are now detransitioning, and they have some lasting physical hurts that are going on because of poor bone density, loss of hair, loss of sexual function. So uh, just putting a pause on puberty, as these gender affirming doctors, as they describe it, they describe it in such a way as it's such a minor thing. It's so benign, and it's actually very, very hurtful to the individual in their physical function. So I'd like to bring in legislation that would ban that, that would prohibit medical medical providers from doctors and nurses from actually administering these very hurtful drugs and surgeries. So.
Yeah, very good. And I'm with you 100% on that. What we say in our platform is that basically we would defund uh, gender reassignment surgery,
Mhm.
abortion, and medical assistance in dying, and we would
Mhm.
put that money towards proper medical care. And as you mentioned earlier, palliative care. Canada is very short on palliative care. True palliative care, helping people to enjoy their latter years to the best extent possible, in comfort and just having their needs looked after.
Mhm.
Instead, this government, both federal and provincial, seem to be pushing for more and more medical assistance in dying because,
Mhm.
frankly, it's a lot cheaper to kill people than it is to care for them if they have needs.
That's correct, and I believe that the law, is meant to. It's that sword that the talks about in Romans 13, that the sword that the magistrate wields, but it's not just a way to restrain evil, but it's also a tool for educating people. And so it's educating. The maid law is educating doctors that this is the way that we can solve problems. If I have a problem patient that has, you know seemingly no hope of getting better, Well, I'm not going to send them to palliative care. I'm not going to recommend that. I'm going to recommend maid. And I've talked to triage nurses who are Christians, and they're really their conscience is really bothered by the fact that doctors are going to this. They're using this tool, and they're using it because the law is allowing them to, and it's educating, it's training. Look at the Veterans Administration in Canada, where they've recommended MAID instead of a new wheelchair.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, this is
Oh,
not going to be isolated. This is going to go on, where the option of MAID is going to become more and more a useful tool in this culture of death. And mistakes are being made already with people that are mentally incapacitated. They're in the hospital. They're confused. They don't have relatives around them. And there was a man in Chilliwack who was euthanized, mainly, and on the form it said that the main reason for euthanizing him was that he had hearing loss.
mm.
And so this is just, the tragedy is just going to continue, and we need to repeal this law.
Well, that is like you say, that is the purpose of the law is to keep people from doing things that are bad for them and bad for society,
Hmm.
and to educate. So, like you say, when you have a law like this C4 that makes it a crime for parents to talk to their children about biblical principles regarding sexuality, that trains not only the children, but it trains the parents to zip their lip if they, because nobody wants to go before a judge, nobody wants to go to jail, nobody wants to pay a fine, and certainly nobody wants to have their kids taken away from them. And all these things hang like the sword of Damocles over now parents and pastors and all people of goodwill who want to just be able to discuss the truth
Hmm.
in plain terms, and now are having to be very careful that they don't violate the letter of these draconian laws.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So when we spoke earlier, you mentioned four key points that you're making in your campaign: uh, porn, sogi, transitioning, and maid. So
Yeah.
maybe start with porn and give us a little thought about each of those topics.
Well, I was listening to a podcast a few years back, and I believe it was the Matt Walsh show, and he was talking about um, how horrible it is that we don't have an appropriate block in the digital realm on the internet to prevent minors from accessing pornography. And he mentioned how online gambling, if you are a minor, a little page pops up, and you have to prove your identity and your age before you can go and gamble. And so, this is something that he Matt Walsh was saying, why can't we have something for preventing minors from accessing porn, such as is done with online gambling? And just recently, there are now, I believe, three states in the United States. It's Utah, Kentucky, and Texas that do have laws that stipulate that if you're going to provide adult entertainment or pornography, that you have to put up a page that stops anybody from going further, that you have to prove your identity and your age, and then after that, if you're over 19, you can proceed. This has had an effect, and by the way, in Texas, the penalty is $10,000 a day if you don't comply, and $250,000 for every incident where a minor has accessed pornography on your site. So it's quite, they're wielding the sword, and I would like to do that in Canada. for
Yeah.
all Canadians, to protect all Canadian kids. And this is something that has, with a pushback, the pornography providers have actually withdrawn their material from the servers in those particular states. So, and this is having a knock-on effect. There are 16 states now that are actually proceeding to put up their own law to prevent minors from accessing pornography online. And I'd like to do that for all of Canada. This is something that I don't know why it hasn't come up yet. I don't understand, why a Conservative member of Parliament hasn't maybe taken up this cause. But I think it needs to happen, and it's being proved in the states that it works. So
And of course, just making the obvious statement that porn is not good for anybody, whether
absolutely,
they're
yeah,
a minor or an adult. So
absolutely,
it's that kind of a funny line to say, but we agree. Our children can be so affected so dreadfully, and
sure.
for a lifetime by exposure to porn. And at least when they become an adult, they're capable of, making more mature decisions and responses to it.
Oh,
But
make
I
no
certainly
mistake,
agree.
I'd love to eliminate the whole industry.
Yeah,
Um, but I mean, we got into this mess incrementally. Obviously, Playboy magazine and Hugh Hefner came along decades ago,
yeah.
and that was sort of the thin edge of the wedge, and now it's just rampant. So, but a lot of these things we're going to have to chip away at incrementally until, yeah, I mean, obviously we would like for righteousness to reign across this land
Yeah.
and eliminate some of these scourges that we have. So,
Well,
yeah,
this topic of porn merges with your second major topic, which is sogi. For
yes,
those who don't live in British Columbia, sogi is sexual orientation, gender identity, which in sogi 1, 2, 3 is sort of the baseline curriculum that the British Columbia Ministry of Education has been using. And it basically there's porn involved in that in this
hmm,
for these young uh, students, young people, the even the graphic imagery and certainly the text that they're being taught from. Actually, I don't know why that isn't even considered porn. I would
yes, yeah,
consider it pornographic and
yeah.
certainly harmful to these young lives. So go ahead and speak about that topic, Soji.
Yes. As far as I know, sexual orientation and gender identity ideas or programs to teach people about it. It was introduced quite a number of years ago by the UN, and it's a UN mandated sort of program where they wanted countries to bring in this educational program into K through 12 in order to, I guess, to maybe try to diminish the bullying that's happening and the discrimination against people that are struggling with issues maybe of sexual orientation and gender identity and maybe it was some noble purposes. I don't think any of these people should ever be demonized. The people that are struggling with their gender identity or people that are struggling with their sexual orientation. Obviously, especially as Christians, we need to treat these people who are in those difficult situations of, especially in development and going through puberty and all that. We need to treat them with compassion, but unfortunately, there's an agenda and there's an ideology that's behind the educational system that is being brought to bear at in kindergarten of all places. an educational program is being brought into almost every province now, whereby kids are being taught that um, sexual orientation, there could be two mommies and two daddies in a home, and this is totally normal. They're also being taught that their gender identity might be something different than the gender or sex that they were, what was discovered of them at birth, that they were a boy or a girl. And seeds are being sown into these young minds that it's just egregious that teachers would be allowed to sow seeds of confusion
Yes.
ultimately about who they are, whether they're male or female, and then later on about the attractions that they might have towards either the same sex or the opposite sex, and there is no moral framework or foundation from which this ideology. There is one, but it's not based on absolute truth. It's not based on God's boundaries for marriage and for sex and sexual identity or gender identity. I really don't like using the word gender actually, because it's a socially constructed word that was brought in a few decades ago, and it really, I think we should actually talk just about your sex, whether you're male or female, rather than gender, because it brings up that idea that we can separate, uh, what you think you are, your gender, from what God has made you to be, which is your sex. But anyways,
Yeah,
yeah,
very
it's
good. And I think, the left, call it the left just for easy term, those who are pushing this kind of agenda, they have been able to capture the language in such a way as to frame people like you and me as being against individuals who have, like you say, these feelings that they have not, they haven't really been able to deal with. There's a young man or a younger woman who is struggling with their concept of themselves, who they are,
yeah,
and
yeah,
involving their sexuality. Um, and like you said earlier, very clearly, we're not against any individuals. We're not out to shame or guilt them or
mhm,
cause them, distress in any sense. But the SOGI program and that type of teaching, it creates more young people. It forms young people into those who have more confusion. At least
absolutely,
I
absolutely.
totally believe that we never had. And when I was growing up in school, uh, I didn't know a student who was struggling with these issues.
Hmm.
Probably there were some, but
Sure.
now this program, SOGI, and all its manifestations, is causing almost a herd mentality.
Sure.
These kids feel, many of them feel, well, if I don't change, if I don't transition, then I'm not normal. It's kind of an opposite.
Well, it's also there's some social contagion going on, especially with young women. Apparently, this is a study that was done. There was a 400% increase in requests for gender affirming care. I think it was in Great Britain, but this was happening because of, well, young women who were depressed. They were suffering sort of mental illness, if you will, and they were looking around at their friends. And of course, the internet provides lots of opportunity to explore. And these young women were just saying, "Oh, well, how are you doing with your depression? Oh, I'm feeling so much better because I'm transitioning." And so the thought gets planted, well, I feel kind of depressed. Maybe I should do that too, and maybe I can get over these these problems that I'm having with depression as well. And so it's part of the ideology coming along with the need for people to feel whole and to feel good about themselves, and it's essentially throwing open the gates to um, pursuing things that young men and women were never meant to pursue. And there is a statistic that if you leave a young person alone, for example, who is struggling with their gender identity, and they're just sort of in that prepubescent phase. If you just leave them alone when they are on the other side of puberty, 80% of those people that are gender confused or gender dysphoric will actually be just fine, and they go through puberty, and all of a sudden they don't have confusion. Imagine that God's provided this wonderful means by which we can go through all this hormone change, and on the other side embrace who God has made us to be.
And the opposite, of course, if they do things to their own bodies or through medical involvement, they go on puberty blockers, hormone therapy, and even surgery, removing body parts. They can't go back. And so that's when I think the real depression sets in, and a depression based on reality.
Yes.
The other kind of depression, like you say, kids, adults as well, struggle with certain things emotionally. But
Mhm.
when you've taken a step and you've done it to yourself, you've said, yes, I want to do this. Maybe you were, pressured to do that, but you say, yes, I need to do this. And then later on, you cannot go back. You can't get, the young woman can't get her breasts back.
Mhm.
The body parts that are missing, and you know that you'll never have children. These
Yes.
kind of things are really troublesome, troubling,
Mhm.
and should not happen to our next
And
generation of young people.
so again, the pitch that I would make, that if I got elected, that I would, just as Danielle Smith has done in Alberta for all of all of Canada, for all Canadian children, I would prohibit medical providers from using puberty blockers on minors and on performing gender affirming surgeries on minors. And again, it shouldn't be done for anybody, but we need to protect our children and our future,
Exactly.
our country, our civilization. These are all, you know, I hope that we fix our economy. I hope that we get out of debt. But if we don't know what a man is and what is a woman, if we don't promote the traditional family, the way God ordained family, a husband and a wife, we won't have a civilization. So these are the things that I need. I think that we need to be passionate about, and we need to bring to the fore as CHP candidates, and hopefully as CHP MPs as well.
Yeah, very good. David, thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight. Everyone's busy on the campaign trail, and I am as well. But it's great to speak with you and know that the voters in Esquimalt, Saanich, Sooke have a godly person that they could vote for to initiate change in Ottawa on these important matters. Any final words before we close for the night?
Well, of course, I'm not sure all of the audience that we have, but I really, my hope and my prayer is that God would, um, that He would intervene in our country. There is a desire, I think, by, I would say, a majority of Canadians, that we would get back to the foundation that we know is a Christian foundation for our country. And a lot of those people might not even be religious, but they know they know what natural law is. They know in their hearts and in their conscience that where we're headed is not a good place, and that we need to reverse course on so many things. And so I really urge everybody, who is either campaigning or is ready to vote, to consider the CHP, because I believe that it's the only party, that is championing those three things, which is life, family, and freedom.
Well, thank you very much, David. We're so pleased to have you on the team, and God watch over you, keep you safe, and give you opportunity to share your platform with the voters in Esquimalt, Saanich, Sooke. And of
Thanks
course,
a lot.
for viewers and listeners, if you want to find out more about David or any of our other candidates, you can go to our website chp.ca, and there's a menu item called candidates, and you can look up candidates 2025. They're not quite all there yet. There's a few candidates who joined us in the last couple of days, but they'll be there soon. So, and if you don't have a candidate in your area, that just means that between now and the next election, you need to get busy and find one and let us know who that is. If it's you, that's wonderful. If you find someone else that would make a good candidate, let us know so we can begin working with them for the next election. But right now, our focus is on trying to win some seats in 2025, and I'm so glad to have David as part of the team. So thanks, and let us know if you have any questions, David. As the days go by, this is your first time on the campaign trail, and we really there's a lot of things can come up. So feel free to call head office here, and we'll help you if you have any needs. And voters in your district have a golden opportunity. So
Yes,
it's
yes,
time to vote
absolutely.
CHP.
Yes. Okay. Thanks, Rod.
Yeah, thanks so much. Take care.
All right. Bye now.